Oh, I think we're ready to start.
Ready to go.
All right. Okay, tonight, just again, each night I do a little review of where we've been. So Tuesday night, we did the elementary school principals. All 6 of them were here presenting. Last night, we had the middle school, high school, and Lakes Region Technology Center presenting. Tonight, we have Susan Merrill, Special Education Director, presenting. And after Susan finishes, we'll have a handout with the budgets for at least the middle section, which is all the numbers that I've been talking about over the last two nights and 3 nights counting tonight. And we'll look at where those numbers fit into the budget as we move forward in creating the final product. We won't talk anything about the top section again because we're still in negotiations and making good progress, but nothing is finalized yet, so we can't plug any exact numbers in there yet. Okay? So, Susan, you're off.
Okay. So, I'd like to start with the number of students with disabilities in the district, and it always fluctuates a little with referrals that happen or move-ins. And this week we are at 353 students who have disabilities in the district. That is about 14 to 15% of the population, which is in line with state and national averages on rates of individuals with disabilities. We currently have 7 students educated outside of the district. 3 of those students have been placed by the court. We actually have a couple pending court cases where I anticipate there may be a court-ordered placement. And I'll talk a little bit more about the impact of court-ordered placements and what we see with that coming up. I want to start with good news. The revenues that from 2017-18, I have special ed aid. That was previously called catastrophic aid. That got changed when the rules were revised, so it is now referred to as special education aid, and we were reimbursed $187,666 and 1 penny from that. And then Medicaid to schools, we were reimbursed $241,755.45 for a grand total in revenue of $429,405.46. And we work really hard at it. It really takes everybody in the district working hard, related service providers, paraprofessionals, of recording the sessions that they're doing to get that. It's a lot of record keeping, but it's very worth it. The rules, there is just this year, there was a memo September 28th that their rules are changing around students with 504 plans being able to receive Medicaid to schools reimbursement, and so that may add some additional revenues, but that we're waiting on guidance from the Department of Health and Human Services on that. That is a new change. Over the last few years, we've continued to work on professional development activities that are really designed to build internal resources so that we can build our capacity to address some of the needs that we see in students, but also to help reduce costs long term. The professional development opportunities provide staff members with tools, strategies, and best practices to meet the needs of students while controlling expenditures. So some examples of that, I think you've heard us when the counselors came to present to you last year or so, adverse childhood experiences, which is a study that came out of Kaiser Permanente saying that I think that when it's important to understand, it's not an event itself, it's the child's capacity to cope with the event. And so children can have adverse childhood experience that fall into more of a trauma category, and it's really dependent on that child's ability to cope at that time. So the same child may experience that and doesn't react in the same way. And so we're seeing an increase of kids coming with adverse childhood experiences. Another kind of related to those adverse childhood experiences are professional development around post-traumatic stress syndrome and reactive attachment disorder. On this one, I just want to note I have I've been able to utilize a psychologist who has a specialty in attachment and trauma, and we have a secure platform now, so he doesn't have to travel to us, which is cost saving, but it's been very valuable consultation. Specially designed instruction is really the critical component of special education. It's as a result of these characteristics or experiences you have. Does this child need specially designed instruction? And so we've talked a lot about what does that mean and how do we deliver it, how is it unique to the child, and how are we meeting their needs. We have done some work with life space crisis intervention. We have about 9 staff members trained as facilitators.
So Susan, what is life space?
That is, it's a way of draining off when a child is upset, escalated, and maybe in a really bad spot. It's using certain language to help drain off that energy without making it worse. It's a de-escalation method, and it helps to, I don't want to oversimplify it, but it sort of gets around to faulty thinking. You know, the thought that's going through your head of maybe a negative one results in a feeling, which results in a behavior. If you can get back around to that, reframing the thought, you can reduce the behavior. Collaborative and proactive solutions is another one, with problem solving and collaborating with students, adults, to find solutions. We have reading consultation, where we've done a lot of work with looking at the impact of a child's disability, what the nature of that is, and matching the correct reading program, so that if you have an issue with phonemic awareness, this program might be the best one to address it. So teams have been getting a lot of help around that, so that we are really addressing that reading deficit to continue for the child to make better progress. And we've seen results with that. It's been very successful. The reading consultant that I've been using is actually was pretty instrumental in guiding us toward Foundations, which is used in kindergarten and first grade throughout the district. It's not a special ed initiative, but it has really helped and impacted all students, including those with disabilities. And then we do, I have some behavior consultants that I work. And again, all of this is really designed to give teacher tools, strategies, whether it's an academic skill or managing behavior, so that we have the internal capacity to deal with students. And we keep our numbers. Our numbers of students placed outside of the district by us is, I would say, less than we're a little lower than other districts in the area. So equitable services, at least once a year, I review the special ed services in each school in the district, including related services like speech, OT, physical therapy, to be proactive that students receive what they need. I look at this time of year, I'm looking at the current preschool students, who's going on to kindergarten next year. Is one school receiving a large group of preschoolers we need to be prepared for? So we are always looking to make sure, and it's not always equal, it's how the services align. And it's not always numbers. It's not necessarily that this school has X number of students with disabilities. It's what's the nature of that disability, how severe is it, what are the services that they need. It's very advantageous that Governor Wentworth is a cooperative district, because it allows us to use grant money or other funds at any school where there's a need. I use the grant funds to offset unexpected expenses. For example, we have a student who's going to need a Hoyer lift. That's a very expensive purchase, but the team is, and that is something I will put in the grant, but the team is looking not only at cost, but the longevity. Is a slightly more expensive Hoyer lift going to last 10 years instead of a less expensive that might only last 3 or 4. So we're always looking for how we can support those unexpected. There are a lot of other, that comes up a lot if, you know, we've had, especially when it's a low incidence disability like a child who's visually impaired or blind or deaf or hearing impaired, that's a little, those are lower incidence disabilities, and so they often require special equipment, and those types of things go in the grant rather than the school district budget. So our goal is to provide equitable services at each school. There are two staffing changes that I just want to note. I know Ryan Gilpatrick had mentioned the need for an increase from 70% to 100% in Tuftonboro, and that position is really needed to be able to implement IEPs as they're designed. And then New Durham, Kelly Colby-Seavey had referenced when she met with you the need for adding a 50% special education teacher at New Durham. We had hoped that we could delay that a year, but after meeting with Kelly and Kathy today, we felt that it was necessary to bring that request forward. The Individuals with Disabilities Act, which is the federal, and the New Hampshire standards require that students be educated in the least restrictive environment. The least restrictive environment is an important regulation around inclusion of students with disabilities having access to the general ed curriculum with non-disabled peers, that it's really about inclusion. And currently the staffing patterns, the limitations at New Durham are when children, they're pulled out rather than being in the classroom. And so we have students that are being pulled out of their general ed classroom, and some of them may have to be pulled out more than once if they need reading and math because of the limitations there.
And this 50% will help correct some of that?
Okay. Yeah. And it would allow for push-in so that you can be in the classroom rather than being pulled out. So, extended learning opportunities. This is another use of the grant that there is now this year we started through grant funding a 50% extended learning opportunities teacher at Kingswood Regional High School. It creates alternative pathways for students with disabilities to earn credits and become college and career ready. The extended learning opportunities provide relevant and meaningful experiences in meeting competencies and standards for graduation. We have something called Indicator 13 in special ed. That is post-secondary transition. That is an area that we get monitored on, and that the spirit behind that is really that we would be looking beyond credits to preparing you for what's next. What do you need next to go to work, to go to college, to move on with your life, and the extended learning opportunities go a long way in helping with that. I think that we've been monitored twice. We're probably coming up due, I'm guessing, because it's about every 5 years. And there's an 8-point checklist. And I think that it's just really critically important that we are able to identify your chosen path and make sure that you have what you need to be successful there beyond high school. So I think this will help us quite a bit. We also applied for and received, we are a cohort through a New Hampshire Department of Ed initiative, which has grant funding associated with that we are in a community collaborative with the Children's Center, and it is geared to birth to 5, and it is providing a substantial amount of professional development in the pyramid model, positive solutions, and data tracking for the Children's Center and Governor Wentworth. The Children's Center is actually the implementation site this year, and then we will likely add one of our preschools next year. It is a 4-year grant, and it comes comes with about $10,000 in grant funds that we're still new, so I'm not sure how those will be utilized. And a more complete I'm giving a more complete presentation on that at the January school board meeting, and Terry Ann Cox, who's the director of the Children's Center, will come with me. So, and then other than those two, the 30% and the 50% staff increase, the budget, the special ed budget is level funded, and I think that we're giving diligent attention to the revenue streams that we can receive, and by building those internal resources that we're hoping that that we can manage with a level funded, no increase budget. Our revenue, just so you know, our revenue streams and our expenditures, so things like out-of-district placements, transportation, our identification rights are on a par or better than other districts throughout the state. You have the option of participating in a survey of putting your information in. 49 districts did, and we were right average or above average. So that's nice reinforcement for me to have. I always like to talk with you about trends that I see coming, and one of those is the impact of the opioid crisis. We have seen a marked increase in children birth to 5 who have been removed from their homes by DCYF for neglect due to drug and alcohol abuse. Those children end up placed in foster placements, and when the court joins us as a party, it triggers a referral to special education or early support. So if the child's birth to 2.5, 3, the early supports gets the referral, and if they're older, we get the referral. And so what we're seeing there is that that increase is impacting an increase in preschool referrals, and our numbers are up a bit in preschool. And I think that gets back to, earlier the professional development about the adverse childhood experiences and the post-traumatic stress syndrome. It all fits and plays together in what we're seeing with kids entering school. I've mentioned before, but the New Hampshire rules exceed federal standards in a number of ways. I think many of those rule changes or excesses are to the benefit of children. I think many of them are helpful in the best interest of children, but there are several that inadvertently downshift costs to districts, and we need to adhere to those, but it does do some downshifting. The department, the Commissioner of Education now has to post those on the DOE website, so if you're curious, you can find them there.
Are these unfunded mandates, Brandy?
Yes, yes they are. So, and then I wanted to point out, so the New Hampshire Standards for the Education of Children with Disabilities was revised and went into effect March 24th of 2017. In that revision, previously private providers, so those are the out-of-district placements, private providers were using the Consumer Price Index for increases, and in that revision, private providers are able to increase their tuition rates by 5%. So that is always a worry. They don't do their rate setting yet, so I'm predicting a budget without having those rates set yet. But the Consumer Price Index is around 2.5%, and I'm expecting tuition to increase 4 to 5%. So that there is a difference in that particular, the way that particular rule goes. And I just wanted to, I didn't raise the tuition rates, but it's a little worry. And then out-of-district placements, we've had a little bit of an unexpected increase in out-of-district placements from students who have moved into the district from somewhere else and had an out-of-district placement in that district, or they become court involved but they were previously homeschooled. So there's no way to predict for that because I can anticipate if you're in the district with us, it's easier for me to anticipate that we may be headed on that road, but we have seen an increase that way. When children move into us from another district where they may have had an out-of-district placement, our teams are looking at that. Do we have those internal resources? Do we have systems in place that could manage this child, or do they truly need the out-of-district placement? And sometimes it really depends if you're coming from an inner city or somewhere much larger than us, and the school is really large. It might, a high school of 3,000 coming here, we may be able to accommodate you, and so we consider a lot of factors when we're doing that. Children who are placed by the court qualify for something called 402. 402 caps our expenditures at, it's not set again this year, but it's going to be roughly around 48,000. So if an out-of-district placement hits that cap, then the state takes over.
If the state has the money to pay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, but sometimes what happens is the court orders a child to a residential placement. The residential placement ends, but we continue, they may not be ready to resume school, and that can double. It's actually, believe it or not, it's often less expensive when the court places a child residentially because you don't have transportation costs, and then sometimes our costs can double depending on where the placement is. So, related services, we've had a kind of a significant increase in children requiring speech and language. I did that was one of the areas I looked at in June, and I shifted, again, looking at equity of caseloads and where our highest demands were and how do we best meet the needs of children. I shifted some speech and language pathologists' caseloads to make it work a little bit better. But that may be something that comes next year, that there may need to be an increase, just projecting ahead. That's all I have.
That's a lot, and thank you for putting all that together. I think it's, I think we're very fortunate to have you and the staff in place that really keeps us.
I have a great special ed staff and great DBTs, and
there's a lot that goes into it, obviously. Just a tremendous amount of work.
And I think that we work very hard to be in compliance with the rules and DOE expectations, but we really have the child at the forefront, what's best for this child, and we will find a way to get you what you need to be successful.
Yeah, I'll just say your meticulousness of you and your department, I think you always put the children first, but you really manage the funds you have in a way that just benefits the taxpayers. I mean, you don't know how good we have it, I feel like.
And certainly not to take anything away from any of the special ed, but it's always disturbing to me when the state might set a particular figure at, say, that the 402 at roughly $48,000. Right. So you kind of plan on, okay, that's your limit, and the state again has historically not stepped up to the plate to 100%.
Well, and those rates go up each year. So catastrophic aid or special ed aid and 402 it always hikes up just a little bit.
Yeah. And it's frustrating if we expect some money coming in and it doesn't show up because the state says, well, we just don't have it.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the the increase for the other providers.
Right.
If the inflation is 2.5%, then they can go up 2.5%.
Right.
Why are the state dictating that? Well, the local taxpayers can afford it. They can, just let them increase it to 4 or 5%. I mean, it's frustrating for us because, we try to keep the taxpayers in mind and control costs and all of that. And in the grand scheme of things, it might be a relatively small amount of money, but still, it's more money that has to be added to the budget.
Right. Right.
And it's just frustrating.
Yeah.
That's not your,
No,
your
right.
problem and
right.
your fault,
That's what we
obviously,
try to
but,
live with, though.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We all try to live with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just the unpredictability,
Right,
I
it's-
think, is that, you
That's,
know.
that's the challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to look at your budget and say, level funding is great,
Yeah.
but, okay, let's see what your 18 actuals were
Yeah.
and where you are here. Let's cut a whole bunch of stuff out.
Right, right.
But knowing
And then
that
you
if
have a
we-
blind child move in who
Right,
has
and-
cerebral palsy.
Right,
Right.
and all of a sudden, you're in that,
Right.
And
Hypothetically.
And I think, and we
Yeah.
understand that, so
Right.
but we may not spend
Right.
it all, but we have to
Right.
budget it because it's, the unpredictability is there, so.
If you don't budget for the unexpected, that's what will keep, that's what will keep
Right.
Susan and I up at
Right,
night.
right.
Well, it'll keep us at night too, if we have to find the money too somewhere else, but.
Well, and we have had, I felt like this year we had a lot of children with complex needs move in that we've been able to address, but that's also a little, you don't know who's gonna move in, who's gonna get court placed. It's been interesting with homeschoolers who got court involved, and then that triggered a referral that it's just harder when you can't predict who you're gonna, and sometimes you're surprised at who gets court involved because it didn't happen at school. It can happen anywhere. It's not, the kids who get court involved could have been caught in the community with something and they're actually doing very well in school, but there are consequences associated with that could lead somewhere else, so that there is a very much an unpredictable quality to special ed.
Have any questions for Susan, or that you? They do a great job in special ed, and it's very, very complicated, and we're very, very fortunate to have Susan in charge and keeping everything going.
The best part is problem solving and thinking out of the box. So,
Absolutely.
that's the best part of special ed.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. I really appreciate that. Any other questions from the board? No. Okay, great. Okay, I think we're going to move on now, and
Jeff, did you want me to go over some of the district, because there's some district programs that no one
Sure.
has covered.
Sure.
So I thought
Absolutely.
Yeah.
that might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
necessarily huge budget implications,
Yeah.
but just so that people who have been here for 3 nights in a row get the whole picture.
yeah, no, that's
So-
great. Yeah, that'd be great, and then we'll do some numbers and take it from there.
Do you want me to go to the hall? Am I okay?
You can sit there.
Okay.
That's fine.
Not sure what the protocol is.
I thought it might be interesting because you heard a little bit last night about the free and reduced lunch numbers in a couple of the schools, to hear about it district-wide, because it's surprising the percentage of our students who are entitled to free and reduced lunch across the district, particularly in those communities that we think of as maybe a little more well-off financially than some of the other communities. So I just put together a few numbers for you. At Carpenter School, 32% of the students are entitled to free and reduced lunch. At Crescent Lake, 20%. Effingham, you heard last night, that was 42%. New Durham, 29%. Ossipee is such a large number. Ossipee is 60%. Tuftonboro, 27%, certainly higher than you might think. The middle school overall, with all the communities combined, is 29%, and then the high school, 27%. So I think those statistics are very interesting to know how many of our students really are food insecure, really.
Yep.
That's based upon family income?
Yes. So we also have a few programs that didn't get discussed last night because they're grant programs and there's not a fiscal impact, or they're district-wide programs, so they didn't really fall into one school or another. And you talked about one last night, Jack, and that's Lakeside Academy.
Yeah.
And as Jack said, that's been a great support to our students, because those students who haven't been successful in the high school, not for lack of trying on the high school's part, have another option. And we right now have 28 to 30 students. There'll be 2 more entering. I talked to Grady today. 2 more entering the program this year.
There's 30 students in the Lakeside Academy. That's the alternative education program. So we have 30 students this year in that program.
And that program has been altered a little bit. As you know, they were in a facility that was less than adequate, and they have a really nice facility now right next to the SAU. And also, we had some special education students that were accessing Lakeside, but for a very long time, Lakeside didn't have any special ed support, so we were able to work out a deal with the Ombudsman program to provide special education services for those students as well. Another program that's across the district is English as a Second Language. Now, we don't have that many students who are ESOL, but even of the 9 students, the interesting thing is we have students that speak Dutch, Spanish, Polish, Hindi, Chinese, and Korean, which I think is a pretty interesting mix of languages. Yeah.
Not your typical.
So, we have a couple of summer programs that we really didn't hear about last night. We have Title I funds for Ossipee and Effingham, and we run summer programs for students who need some remediation. And so the programs generally run about 4 weeks, several days a week, so that those kids don't lose any ground, and hopefully they can gain some ground during the summer. Carroll Academy is another program for students who are not in school, but they work toward a diploma or they get tutored so that they can take the high school equivalency exam. And they can enter that program at any time. It doesn't have to be right after high school. And although we administer the program, it's in Tamworth, and anyone in Carroll County can access it. So right now, and these are not Governor Wentworth students necessarily, but the combination of the diploma program and the equivalency exam program has 26 students. And then there are some other options. There's basic adult education and English as a second language in that program as well. And there's a work-ready component, and there are 30 additional students in that program. And again, not necessarily coming straight from our high school, but maybe people kids that have made decisions at a certain point in their life, and maybe they've decided that they should go back to school and get some training. So it's just not another option for them, which I think is great. At Ossipee Central School, we have an after-school program, and that's funded through a 21st Century grant. The program runs 4 days a week, and there are enrichment activities, drama, art, Legos, tutoring, robotics, and an amazing 70% of the students take part in that program. And the other thing that's important about the program is that the grant doesn't cover it all, and the district doesn't cover it, so there's quite a bit of fundraising that goes on. And we also have people in the community that donate, and the town of Ossipee also kicks in some money for that. So it's a nice community effort. We also have a homeless liaison, and that homeless liaison works across the district supporting students who are homeless. And I don't have the exact number of homeless students, but I know it's well over 100 homeless students in the district.
Yeah, we had a presentation in another facility from the Hope House, and part of their whole process is talking about the homeless in the Governor Wentworth School District, and their number is about 130. Whether that's a little higher, a little how they actually measure that, but there's quite a it's quite a number, and again you don't expect to hear those numbers here. But homeless, the homeless process, they just had an article on the internet today about that. Homeless is not just what you think it is.
Right.
It's not just people sitting on the street because they don't have a place to go.
Right.
There's a lot of factors that go into that, so it's a problem everywhere.
Yeah. Again, one of those things that it's not visible, but it's there, and we're working on it. And then finally, our district robotics program, which you heard a little bit about last night, and that's funded by the district, and we also have a couple of $1,000s in grant money. But we have a couple of very, very generous donors in the community. The program is as the school board knows, the program is very, very expensive to run. And if our kids do well, which we want them to do, it gets more expensive. Because then you send them to the competitions,
Right.
and then you have to have additional materials and supplies for them, which are very, very expensive. And so when they win, we want to have the money there for them to do those things. And we've had some donors help us with that, because again, that's something that you can't always predict. So we're very fortunate. So those are the things that I just didn't want to miss in the whole presentation. And I can talk about the budget process from our end at the SAU, unless you want to go right into the numbers.
No. Why don't you talk about that, and then we'll hand the papers out, and we can look at where the numbers are and all of that. So,
all right.
Sure.
So the budget process starts, much to the chagrin of the administrators, in early October. And so they have to make predictions, of course, for not the year they're in, but the following year. So they gather information from the teachers, they put that all together, then they come to see Kathy and I, and we look at things, and they present their case, they have their justifications, similar to what you saw the last couple of evenings. And we go through and talk about their priorities, but we also look at the numbers and the bottom line, and depending on what they bring forward, they may be asked to go back and see what they can do, see if they can bring it down a little bit. So then we get that back, look at it, and if they've really done a good job with it, then that goes. If we see some things that maybe could be right, James can verify this. If we see some things that maybe we think they could take another look, we ask them to do that. And they're really great. As you saw the last couple of nights, they know their schools, they know their budgets, they're conservative, they really balance things. If something is up here, then they try to reduce something someplace else. So they're really good. But sometimes they also want things rather than need things, and so those are the kinds of things that we have to talk about. So
just to interject,
sure.
I share that same sentiment. And coming new to the scene here this year, the administrators did a fabulous job.
Absolutely.
And I was expecting, when I let them know they needed to shave a little off, I was expecting pushback. I did not get that at all. I got, okay, when do you need it by? I'm not used to that. So that's just one thing. It really is, so thank you.
Yeah.
on the other hand, I will tell you, they are not shy.
No,
It's true.
So, I can guarantee, Kathy, that, when they want something, they'll let us know.
Oh, yes.
Or need something.
Yes.
Or need something.
Definitely.
So they'll let us
I've
know.
had plenty of those calls.
So we did have several reductions. We had a reduction in Tufton Borough. Came in initially at somewhere around 4%. It's down to 1.9. Crescent Lake, just a little reduction, not too much, James, from around a little bit over 3% to 2.18. And then Effingham had a small reduction, but that just looks so big because of the professional services.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take the professional services out, it was really only 2.82.
Right, that was that one
total.
nursing position
Yes.
that
Yeah.
comes out
Went
of
from
one
an
bucket.
employee
and goes
to a
into
Right.
contracted service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Carpenter was a little bit over 3%, and that came in at 1.27. The middle school and the high school needed to do some serious looking. So they started out at 9, and middle school came down to 1.7. High school started out at 9 and came down to 2%. So if you look at no change in Ossipee Central School and no change at the Technical Center, so we were able to shave off almost $181,000, so to come in a little bit more reasonable for the school board. So that's all I have as an intro.
And then it's our job to look at it afterwards. We're going to take a look at it now. Let me hand these out. By the way.
Is he armed? And
No, I think we'll have, yeah, we have one, so I think
Oh,
we're good.
so do you.
We can get one to Ed later on. Okay. So basically what we're gonna be, what we're looking at, if you look at that the middle section, which starts with the professional services going down. Based on what we talked about the last several evenings, where we were budgeted, what was requested, you can see the pluses and minuses right on down the line. And this is I think it really is important to note that for the most part, most of the areas are level budgeted, negative budgeted. There's a few areas up. Obviously, the health services, the one we just talked about, moving that one position. So it goes into this bucket, but out of the salary bucket later on. Again, as you look at it, insurance goes up. That's an increase. There's not much we can do about that. Most of the other ones are budgeted on the negative side. A couple of the areas that I'm going to look at from my standpoint are those that are positives, where we maybe didn't spend back in 2018 as much as we had budgeted, and we're still budgeting considerably more. And again, whether we will or won't be able to, and I'm looking at, say, general supplies. In 2018, we budgeted $649,000. We spent $597. We budgeted $665 last year. I'm not sure where we're going to come in this year, but do we need to increase that to $681? That may be an area of, slight tweaking. We did hear a lot of talk the last couple of nights about the new equipment and replacement equipment. A lot of that had to do with technology, and concern that all the schools are up to snuff on technology. We may want to look at those numbers, but we may not want to touch them, because it's important to keep our students up to snuff on that. So those are areas that we'll look at now that we have all the pieces in. If you look at those two items, the new equipment and the replacement equipment, that makes up the bulk of the $416,000 difference. So we'll take a look at those. We'll take every single line item and see if there's anywhere we can trim a little bit, and then go from there. The good news is that the debt service is down by $147,000 this year between principal and interest, and that's a good sign. So we're continuing to get there, and obviously we're not at this point looking at an increase in the building and maintenance warrant article. We're going to discuss that. We're going to take a look at all of the items that are on that list of potential needs, and not wants, but again, needs, and what has to be prioritized. And if that $150,000 is going to be enough for this coming year, well, not this year we're in, but next year's budget, or whether we want to try to increase that back to the $200,000 that we had in the past. So we'll talk about that and look at all the different pieces. And that's pretty much where we are as far as numbers right now. It's a little bit difficult because, again, that top section, we're in active negotiations with all three unions. We're hoping to come in with some changes in benefits and a few other things that we're talking about. We're hoping that that's not going to be a significant increase this year.
So taking the budgets that were presented earlier and roll them in here as they were presented.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So everything you saw that somebody wanted a little bit more for this, and a little more for that, a little less than that, that's all massaged into this one document now. So all the numbers have been combined together to give you these breakdowns.
Can you talk about line 561 a little bit?
561 tuition. That is mostly the special ed. That's almost all special ed, and that's why you look at what we budgeted and what we actually expensed. But I'm not going to cut $600,000 out of there, because all we have to do is have that one or two cases in, and all of a sudden we're going to be in trouble. So that's where that one is, and that's a very good question, because that's a big number.
And we're in 2019. 19
Right.
now, so that was like a
Right.
year
Right.
ago, those numbers. It's not really reflective of
Yeah. And
what
that's
could
the
be
hard
the
part, because
expenses right now.
some of these things, especially special ed, this is a budget for 2020, so that's not the school year we're in now. So this is starting next July going forward, and we have no idea what's gonna happen with that. Some things we can.
And the tuition rates can go up 5% per law,
Right,
so you need to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have people that tuition into the high school.
Yes.
So that's an income.
Yeah, oh, yes, yeah, and once we don't have the income section on this, which we could have included, but that's about $1 million.
Yeah, I think we have
$1,400,000 or something like that.
$1,000,001, I think,
$1,000,001?
yeah.
Yep.
For tuition, so we're
$1,132,000
bringing in about $1,000,001 or so for students coming into the district, which obviously helps. And, you know, again, the addition, it's interesting, several years ago when, several years ago, a lot of years ago, when Prospect Mountain was first built. Before that, we had the students from Bondstead here, and they were tuition students in. The year they left, I think we took a hit of $800 and some odd thousand, I think, because they are now part of Prospect Mountain High School. To be able to bring in the students from Middleton, now that they're here in our middle school and high school, is bringing that tuition money back into the district. So that helps. And with the numbers down a little bit over the years, they've been a tremendous addition to our schools. And that money coming into a school to help the taxes are tremendous. So, yes, sir.
What's the size of the total staff in Kingswood?
The
district?
professional staff
Yes.
is like 268 or something like
Yeah.
that. I think about
That's
268.
close.
That's
Yeah.
management and,
That's
There's
the professional.
There's 238 point something FTEs for teachers alone.
Okay.
So add in the other professional staff and we're.
Yeah, so about 260 some odd if you look at professional staff.
Right.
And then we have the support staff, and support staff is
Oh, boy,
close to
another-
200?
Yeah, I would think,
Over.
well, let's see, I think more than 200, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, altogether there's.
Around 500.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, so about 500 total employees for the district.
and total students?
I'm sorry?
The total students, I have.
Total students is.
I have that
oh,
figure.
I have it too.
It's about
Actually-
2,400 approximately.
About 2,400, yeah.
26.
Yeah. 24, 26. So,
Thank
Can I-
you.
so, yeah.
Can I ask a question on line 830, the interest?
Mhm.
So it looks like the proposed interest payments are down, but is that 10.27 and should that be a negative?
You're right.
Yeah, it just flipped around. Yeah, that should be a negative.
And actually, I think I had done some more work on something. Let me just.
And that interest is the,
That's interesting.
that interest reduction is part of, I think, what I spoke about the other night about
Right.
the
Packet.
bond,
Uh-huh.
the bond being renegotiated, and it saves us money for the balance of our payments. And Kathy was just telling me before that over the next few years, the payments kind of go down, you know, or the interest. How did you put that?
It goes down.
The payments go down and then
they
go
back
up again, just because of the type of bond it is. A little odd that way. Okay, the savings actually, so this year it's 40,000, 40,000 and change. Then it goes down to 36, 37, and then it starts going back up 39, 40, 42, 40. So the reduction starts actually going back up, so our payments wind up going down again. So for the next couple of years, it's about the same as this. And then it goes down a little bit, so our payments go up a tiny bit. And then by 2023, it starts going back and our payments start going down again. So.
I did a quick calculation. That formula must be wrong because the one below it is correct.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's a negative 3.48%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe just one more?
Sure, good.
Yeah,
As
then
many
you
as you
got
want.
it.
We heard how you use the internet. So I see that here, but right above it is telephone. And that's not on top of the internet? That's a separate
There's a separate.
fair point as opposed to using the internet?
They
and-
break them out, yeah, yep.
Oh, it's from the,
Whatever provider, because the district is so large, there's different providers, and I couldn't tell you which providers, but there's a separate fee for telephone versus the internet.
even though you may use the internet for the telephone?
We're not using, we might be using voice over, which
Yep.
one of the schools has been converted over to, OSIP, but all the rest of them are not.
There might be an opportunity there.
Well,
Yeah.
we're starting to, that's.
Yeah, I think as these companies start building out, in fact, in Meredith, we're using First Light, which used to be Bay Ring Communications. First Light is out of Maine. I think they're in here, as a matter of fact, in one of the
Yep,
buildings
yep,
for
yeah.
some. And they're really starting to string a lot more fiber everywhere. And once they get that fiber out there, then the opportunities for voice over IP phones and all that are right there, and a tremendous savings, it really is. So hopefully that
But
can
it
be something we
costs
can
money
look
to-
at.
Right.
It costs money to put in.
Yeah,
Obviously,
there's a certain amount of money to change over.
Yeah.
And you pay a fee for the connection, for the internet connection, or the fiber connections and all of that on a regular
And the
basis.
phones, because the phones we
Yeah.
have are antiquated.
Yeah, the phones, yeah, all of those things take some money, but in the long run,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
tremendous savings, and hopefully we can get there.
That is a part of our technology plan, but it's all a matter of timing, because in order to do it, you have to be able to afford the upfront costs.
Right.
So we haven't come forward to the board for the upfront costs for that at this time, but we will be.
Yeah, I think once we know that the technology is really
Yeah.
there, because a lot of times they try to push the stuff, and I know some of the phone companies out there, they oh, we can give you this, we can give you that, and when you really look into it, it was all DSL, it wasn't fiber connection and all this stuff, and until the real fiber is in place everywhere, probably doesn't make a lot of sense. Any other questions? Anything that you'd like us? And as we get closer, by the beginning of December, we're hoping to have pretty much everything done for the top section of the budget. We'll have a whole budget put together, and the first meeting, our board meeting in December, and I don't have a date. I think it's December 12th. That'll be
I
the,
think
it's maybe earlier than
I
that.
think it is.
Perhaps it's the
The
third.
third.
I was gonna say,
December-
it's the
I'm
third.
thinking of-
Hampshire.
December 3rd in Tuftonboro, that'll be the
Middleton,
budget
maybe.
presentation, the initial preliminary budget presentation. And hopefully we'll have all the pieces put together, including the revenue side of that. So you can see exactly what.
12th with Middleton. Okay.
And then after that meeting, anything else that needs to be changed in the budget will be affected with the final presentation in January. And then that'll be discussed at the deliberative session. And whatever changes, if any, at the deliberative session would be what we vote on in March. So I think we're good. Anything else here? All right, I think we can wrap it up, and I really appreciate you
Thank you.
two gentlemen being here for the entire time. And hopefully it was informative for you. The process is certainly different than doing a town budget. And it's a little bit different for us, and we haven't actually gone through the actual presentations from each one of the principals in a few years, because we've relied on the superintendents and the business administrator to just bring the information forward. But this was a great process for us. Hopefully it's a process that we'll use in the future, and if it's taped, it'll get out there on the internet, and people can watch what's going on. All right? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Very good.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. All right, we're done.